Welcome to our world. Won't you come on in? Waiting just for you. Welcome to our world.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome
to Existential Crises. What's your existential crisis this week, Jim?
I guess when we get into the grievances.
Why do we not have that? We should have an existential crisis of the week. Or something.
That would make sense.
We're not very true to our brand, are we?
No, we're not. That would make sense. That's
well,
why
maybe
we're called
we shall.
Kind of like the problem is it's an ongoing existential crises. It's not just one, it's many.
We are going to maybe just do an elongated blend today.
Okay.
Seeing as we didn't get to any of the history stuff last week and we have comments and I have many complaints that I didn't realize I had until a short while ago. So that's really
when you
exciting.
were spending time with me.
Yes. Yeah. And it just very quickly, the things all came to me.
Oh, that's right.
But we will begin with
This Week in History.
This Week in History. That's right. So you'll have to act surprised because some of these are the ones you probably don't remember. The ones
I will be surprised anyway.
Recorded in the lost episode of
No, I would hope I'll remember them, but
okay. 2006, First Lady of Drag Racing is inducted into the Hall of Fame. Who
Shirley
is it?
Muldowney.
There it is. He didn't know that the first time around.
I did too. I did know it.
No, you couldn't think of, and we don't have evidence of this. You couldn't think of her name, and you said, "I know it's not the NASCAR one," and I said, "Danica Patrick," and you said, "Yeah, I know it's not her."
I asked
and
you for the first name or something.
Yes, Shirley.
And then
you immediately knew Muldowney. That you don't get full credit for that.
But my point is, I knew it. Hold on.
You do not get full credit.
Not, if her last name was Jones.
No.
Like Shirley Jones.
She was the first woman to receive a license to drive a top fuel dragster.
She was the first woman to receive a license
Association in 1965. You know, it's hilarious. Had you not cut me off right there, you would have heard the whole sentence. So that's super fun. When do we get to the grievances again? Okay. So last Monday, do you have anything else to say about Shirley?
I'm going on sabbatical for the rest of this podcast.
Anything else to say about Shirley?
No.
Are you sure?
She had a pink dragster.
I almost said Shirley, but it wouldn't have been funny. It would have been funny if you
should have said. When I said she had a pink dragster, it was the perfect time for you to say.
No.
For you to say. I go
sexist.
low, you go lower.
I think it's annoying that people want to tell me that listen to the podcast how funny you are. Oh, we're not in the airing of grievances yet. Okay, we'll get there. So last Monday, we know March 17th is St. Patrick's Day. What you didn't know was in 1886, the Carroll County Courthouse Massacre begins. Do you remember what this was?
No, how would I remember? I wasn't around then.
Okay. 23 African Americans were killed by a white mob at the Carroll County Courthouse in Carrollton, Mississippi.
I remember my comment in the lost episode of the podcast.
What was your comment?
We'll never truly... You actually read more of the details.
Okay, I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Locals had congregated at the courthouse that day to witness the trial of James Little, a white man who was put on trial after brothers Ed and Charlie Brown, who were half black, half Native American, pressed charges after Little allegedly started a confrontation that resulted in gunfire and injuries. Although the Brown brothers were legally entitled to press charges, the white citizens of Carroll County were furious that they had done so. The day of the trial, a mob of white men on horseback approached the courthouse, entered through several doors, and opened fire on the Brown brothers and other African-American witnesses. Newspapers reported on the massacre immediately, resulting in a public outcry against the violence and oppression. However, Mississippi Governor Robert Lowry publicly blamed the black population of Carroll County for the incident, stating the riot was, quote, provoked and perpetrated by the outrage and conduct of the Negroes. The government and authorities did nothing to investigate or document the massacre, so no identification of the perpetrators has ever been made. Jim?
Well, again, we don't really know for sure what happened with that. We'll never know. There were two opposing sides. And what makes it more confusing? What was the name of the white guy?
James Little.
Okay, Little. I'm glad his last name wasn't White, because the other guys, their last name was Brown, and it makes it confusing when you're saying
Sure.
the Brown
So-
brother, because like it's just really confusing.
I think what bothers me is
Yes.
that response. How come you don't have that response? You haven't had that for anything else that I've read. Why is everything else that I've ever read like, wow, that's crazy?
It's a good
Wow,
point.
I don't know.
It's a good point you
This
have
is the
there.
very first history thing I've read.
I think because I've, over the past 20 years, maybe not even that long, maybe dozen years or whatever, I've seen certain things happen, and maybe it's only in the current environment. So maybe it's different, or it's been different more recently. But I feel like I can't think of his name now. Okay. Like, for instance, there's the incident with Michael Brown. Okay. That
This doesn't have to be a whole thing.
I know. Well, you asked me a question. I'm trying to
You can't just answer the question. It always has to be a whole thing.
Well, I'm trying to make the point. Okay. There's cases where I see stuff and I'm like, this isn't right. Like, it's not. So we'll have to have a whole episode to talk about this, because there's not enough time to get into it without people that will take it not the way that it's meant, that I intend for them to take it, will take it the wrong way. And I don't want to get into it right now. It would take too long.
I have many things to say, but I'm not going to say any of them.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, there's not enough time.
In
That'd be a whole episode.
1852, Wells and Fargo start shipping and banking company. I did not know that those were two separate individual men, Henry Wells and William G. Fargo.
It's funny when you stop and think about it, and it's like the dumbest thing, but most companies, right, or like Campbell's Soup, okay? Well, there was someone named Campbell's, right? Campbell. And like all these things, and you don't think about it, but so many, Johnson and Johnson.
I know. Well, we had, it's funny because we had talked about that in the episode where we mentioned the Frisbee, and something else was made that week that I said I can't imagine naming something after myself, my first or last name. I just think
it seems so
narcissistic
to me.
Doesn't it? But
it's
then
just
if you don't,
incredibly egotistical.
then you have to come up with a name.
Yeah, but it would seem like, so what? So come up with a name. Like, I don't know.
Anyway, so this is technically last week in history we're in right now. In 1949, East Germany approves new constitution. That's super exciting. Great job, guys. On March 20th, spring begins in the Northern Hemisphere.
So
I always forget that.
So that was just a few days ago.
Yes. I always forget that there are different not that there are different hemispheres, but that the seasons are opposite.
Are reversed, yeah. And that the water,
it's so weird to think.
That the water goes down the drain the different way.
Right. Well,
or the other.
Sure. It makes sense. I'm not saying I don't understand why, but it's just weird to think that these things all just exist at the same time. And I don't know.
And that there are two spots opposite each other on the earth where the pressure, where the pressure is exactly the same or exactly the opposite. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Where'd you hear that?
From a listener.
You can just say you heard it from Eric. You don't have to stop trying to steal his. Okay, anyway, 1345.
I didn't know if he wanted me to reveal that.
Scholars speculate on origin of the Black Death. Oh, yes, this was a fun one, because do you remember what they thought the origin was?
No, I don't.
So this is the Black Death, now known as bubonic plague. The scholars at the University of Paris thought that it was created from what they called, quote, a triple conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars in the 40th degree of Aquarius.
Yeah.
And then I remember in the initial attempt at recording this, you said, I wonder how many people died. To which I immediately read the next sentence and responded, the Black Death swept across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia during the 14th century, leaving an estimated 25 million dead in its wake. It is now known that bubonic plague is caused by the Yersinia pestis bacterium. The plague was carried by fleas that usually traveled on rats but jumped onto other mammals when the rat died.
And
I'm
the
not reading the rest
conjunction-
of it.
Also, in the conjunction of, what was the planets again?
You're just waiting to make a joke.
No.
And I'm not
Now
here
we
for
know
it.
the conjunction of those planets was caused by the Black Death.
Junction,
and not the other way
what's your
around.
function?
It's cause and effect.
Da-na-na,
They had it backwards.
na-na-na-na. I don't know the rest of the words. I just know conjunction, junction. What's your function? In 1871, Henry Stanley begins search for David Livingstone. I don't remember. Okay, I guess I'll just read this. Journalist Henry Morton Stanley set out from Zanzibar. Great song, Billy Joel. Listen to it. Zanzibar, not the whole sentence. It's just called Zanzibar. To start in earnest his famous search through Africa for the missing British explorer, Dr. David Livingstone, who began a planned 2-year expedition to find the source of the Nile River in 1865. So that was 6 years earlier.
That's just wild.
Little had been heard from him. No, James Little from the first one had heard from him. Okay, anyway, so the Stanley was sent to find Livingstone or bring back proof of his death. So optimistic. Stanley found him in the village of Ujiji on the shore of Lake Tanganyika. Sick and poverty-stricken, Livingstone had been living at the mercy of Arab slave traders. Upon arrival, spotting a white man with a gray beard, Stanley stepped toward him and stretched out his hand, saying, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume?" These words soon became famous. Livingstone refused to return to London and died 18 months later in today's Zambia. He was buried in Westminster Abbey.
That's just so weird. I think it's funny. He set off on an expedition to find the source of the Nile River.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just funny. Like, just...
Why is that funny?
I don't know. It's just like you're walking along and you see a river and you decide, I'm going to find the source of this river.
Let's
and you
see
just
where
start
this
going.
goes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to do that. I want to do that someday. Maybe tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Wednesday.
I'm sorry.
I don't think I'm free Wednesday.
Everything's already been discovered. You may not. Okay.
Thursday, I think I'm free.
In 1820, naval hero is killed in duel. Stephen Decatur, I think, is maybe how
Decatur,
you
yeah.
pronounce his name.
I'm sure.
A hero of the War of 1812 was killed in a duel. He faced off against James Barron, a naval officer suspended during a trial in which Decatur participated. Despite the tragic duel, Barron was permitted to rejoin the Navy at a lesser rank in 1821. That is so weird to me. I don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, there was one more thing on here, wasn't there? So now we actually are moving on to This Week in History.
Okay.
That's super exciting.
Okay.
1919.
Yeah, last week in history that was, right?
Benito Mussolini establishes the Fascist Party on March 23rd, 1919. He was a World War I veteran and publisher of socialist newspapers.
Socialist newspapers? And he created the Fascist Party? Wait a minute.
He ruled Italy with an iron fist until 1943, when Allied armies invaded Italy during World War II.
I wonder if any...
Stop. Go ahead and make the joke, because everybody thinks you're funny, so go ahead.
No, I think of stupid stuff and I don't say it.
I agree that it's stupid. I don't know why people think it's funny, but go ahead. They do. The listeners spit out their drinks when you speak.
Some of the sayings there, like he ruled with an iron fist. Like, that's all. That's all. I would be scared of the guy if he had an iron fist. That's all I was thinking. If I had an iron fist, I could rule as well. So somebody had nuclear weapons, which kind of explains everything, doesn't it?
The saying, rule with an iron fist, originates
okay.
from the symbolism of iron representing strength and control, implying a leadership style that is firm and unyielding,
I mean,
often achieved through force or strict discipline.
I kind of get that,
No,
but
I thought
where's
there
the
might be an actual...
Yeah, like what was the actual
like
origin?
someone had an iron fist.
Yeah.
Like
No,
an iron glove, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, like Captain Hook.
In
Iron fist.
1955,
When was the first time somebody used that, though? They used the
cat
phrase.
on a...
Okay, go ahead. You would think.
I don't know.
No, it probably doesn't tell
Margot?
you. It probably doesn't tell you. It just. You don't have to look it up. It probably doesn't tell you. They never tell you. They just
You never
say it.
see anything.
Yeah, never see.
The concept of ruling with an iron fist can be traced back to centuries-old practices of rulership and control, where strength is often the primary means of maintaining order and authority. It does not say.
Okay.
1955, cat on a hot tin roof opens. That's super exciting. 1911, fire kills 146 at Triangle Shirtwaist Factory.
Oh man, that's sad.
In one of the most infamous incidents in America's industrial history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company factory in New York City burned down. The tragedy led to the development of a series of laws and regulations that better protected the safety of factory workers. It was a true sweatshop, employing young immigrant women who worked in a cramped space at lines of sewing machines. Nearly all the workers were teenage girls who made only about $15 per week, working 12 hours a day every day. There were 600 workers at the factory when a fire began in a rag bin. The manager attempted to use the fire hose to extinguish it, but the hose was rotted and its valve was rusted shut. Exits were
Jeez.
wholly inadequate. Within 18 minutes, dozens of workers burned to death, were suffocated by smoke, fell to their deaths in the elevator shaft, or died jumping from the windows. With 2 more dying later from their injuries, a total of 146 people were killed by the fire.
That's sad. Like really. Just more our feel-good podcast. Okay.
I was just taking a moment.
Moment of silence, yeah.
1950, Senator Joseph McCarthy proclaims that Owen Lattimore is a Soviet spy.
Is that it? No detail?
Do you know anything about that?
No, I really don't.
During a speech the previous month, McCarthy had risen to fame when he boldly claimed that he had a list of more than 200 known communists in the Department of State, despite a lack of evidence. When the Senate demanded details, McCarthy's response rambled into incoherence.
I mean, yeah, that in general, yeah, McCarthy that's what he was known for.
With Lattimore as his scapegoat, McCarthy continued to insist that he had incriminating evidence on at least one State Department employee. Due to McCarthy's reckless accusations, Lattimore became a key player in the Red Scare hysteria, but no evidence was ever found to support McCarthy's charges against any of the so-called communists.
They hit it really well, I guess.
1912, Japanese cherry trees are planted along the Potomac. That's lovely.
So that's where that started. Wow.
I love that. Let's see what happened. Helen Taft, wife of President William Taft, and Chinda Iwa, wife of the Japanese ambassador, planted 2 Yoshino cherry trees on the northern bank of the Potomac River near the Jefferson Memorial. The event was held in celebration of a gift by the Japanese government of 3,020 cherry trees to the U.S. government.
What year was that?
1912.
And then, like 30 years later, we bombed them.
Okay. 1951, mad bomber strikes New York City again. What? What do you mean? A homemade device exploded at Grand Central Station in New York City, startling commuters but injuring no one. In the next few months, 5 more bombs were found at landmark sites around New York.
What year was this?
51. Authorities realized that these terrorist attacks were the work of a criminal they had met before. Although the bomber pledged to stop making bombs for the duration of World War II, he followed his flurry of activity in 1951 with a single incident in 1954, and then in 1955 with bombs in Grand Central Station, Macy's, the RCA building, and the Paramount Theater. Super, super considerate of him, though, to stop bombing during World War II.
I know. He, yeah. And back then, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it was probably difficult to catch this guy because you didn't have DNA, you didn't have like video cameras, you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
I mean, God, it had to be so much harder than it is today. Today, there's like kind of like no excuse, but we can talk about that later.
An investigative team working for Consolidated Edison, New York's electric utility company, which had been the target of the first bomb, finally tracked down the perpetrator in 1957. He was a disgruntled former employee named George Peter Metesky.
Yeah?
Wild.
That sounds like somebody that would be disgruntled.
All right. And this is our last This Week in History for this week.
Okay.
1865. This is a word. that I'm going to pronounce.
Go ahead. I was alive at this point, so
1865. You were alive
no.
in 1865. Appomattox campaign begins.
How do you spell it?
Appomattox. Appomattox.
I mean, sounds right. Maybe the
General Ulysses,
emphasis.
the emphasis. General Ulysses Grant's troops faced off against Robert E. Lee as the last Civil War campaign. So I should know how to pronounce this. This is actually kind of a big thing. The last Civil War campaign, the Appomattox. Appomattox. That doesn't sound right.
It's completely different.
Began. Lee knew that he was outnumbered and commanded his troops to flee. On April 9th, he surrendered at the Appomattox courthouse. All right. That was super fun. There were some interesting ones in there. I didn't know most of those. So we're learning, guys.
Yeah.
Class dismissed.
We should just call this today's history lesson.
No. Because we're moving on to
Listener feedback. Yeah.
listener feedback.
Okay.
Someone commented, Mandela effect stuff is so interesting. Like, how does that happen? Someone else commented, which it is crazy. I don't understand how it happens. Someone else commented, I care most about the cornucopia one. Fruit of the Loom is straight up lying about not having the cornucopia. That's not okay. People have taken pictures of old clothes with the cornucopia logo. I could have drawn the logo from memory and it's exactly the same as the photos.
What?
In fact, that's how I learned what a cornucopia was, because I asked my mom what the heck that logo was. So it's annoying to me that Fruit of the Loom is actually trying to gaslight us. Why? A marketing stunt? Fine. Admit to that and don't lie and pretend it's the Mandela effect.
I gotta check this because I'm thinking I have some really old shirts, and maybe, just maybe, one or two of them might be Fruit of the Loom. I want to see if I can find that.
Yeah.
I might have physical proof. I might not.
But then what incentive would Fruit of the Loom have to gaslight everyone that they never used that?
Just
to be part of the Mandela effect trend?
Publicity. They're hoping that somebody, probably most people don't care, but they were hoping that someone, such as our listener, would bring it up and it would just explode.
Spark controversy.
It would, big lawsuit. There's no such thing as bad publicity.
All right. These comments now are all going to be from last week when we talked about the government shutdown. Nobody really seemed to care about that, but they felt very strongly about the 2 minutes that we talked about the Department of Education and teachers.
I'm amazed nobody cared about the government shutdown part in general, but yeah, go.
If they did, they didn't tell us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Someone said, strongly disagree that teachers don't get paid enough. Yes, we should get a bigger cut of the total education budget, but we literally only work 9 to 10 months out of the year, so multiply our salary by 6.5 and then compare again. We get paid very fairly. And my work hours are 7:49 to 2:49 with a half-hour lunch and 1 to 2 additional free hours during the workday. We absolutely get paid enough for the work we do. This sparked some comments, so I'll just read a few. You can cut me off where you feel necessary here. Someone responds, why am I under the impression that most teachers get paid like 35 to 40K? I know you don't, but still. Someone else responds, it depends on the school and level too. I know of some preschool teachers that make $13 an hour. The original person responded, I mean, private school teachers get paid something like that in a lot of cases, and many teachers when they first start make something low like that, but someone who has been teaching 5, 10, 20 years is making $100K in a lot of places, or even in lower paying districts, it's still at least $70K for only working 7-hour days 9 to 10 months out of the year. Go ahead.
So here's the problem with this, right? Which I guess it's, I mean, obviously somebody that is a teacher has more knowledge on this than you or I, or most people would have. But the problem, I think, then the problem isn't that teachers get paid don't get paid enough or get paid too much, whatever. The problem is that a bad teacher who hangs around for 5 or 10 years makes the same amount as a good teacher who hangs around for 5 or 10 years.
Yes.
It's like because so much of education is private, or I mean public school, right? Like the vast majority is public school, and it's increasing because I looked this up. the percentage is increasing. Like, I think over a 30-year period, the number of private schools, or it was either private or Catholic, but Catholic made up the majority of private schools, dropped by like 37%, right?
Mhm.
And since public schools operate that way, where pretty much all that matters is what degree do you have and how long have you been here? That's it. Okay. So you eliminate the incentive
Mhm.
or the extra benefits, I guess, that or higher pay that you would want to give your better teachers. You want the bad teachers out of there. You don't want to pay them more money, but that doesn't happen. So to me, that right there explains the problems, or not everything, but it's part of the problem in the school system.
Unions.
Well, yeah. And whenever you have whenever you have an industry, I guess, that a big percentage is either public or union based or both, then the companies that don't have unions operate a lot of times as if they do have a union. So in other words, you have the same kind of thing where pay is based on, well, you're this job title, so this is what you make. You've been here this long, so this is what you make. They don't pay individually. They pay, we're going to give all of our assembly line workers
All right.
a certain raise.
So someone responded and said, "You're definitely a rare exception. During my 5 to 6 years of teaching, never once did I make enough to not have a second job." And here, let me see where this goes. That the initial person responded, "It's all in the CBA. If you've been teaching X years and have degrees Y and Z, and the person down the hall has the same XYZ, you get paid the same, period."
Right.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah.
And
That's a recipe for disaster.
then they were just
It's a
doing
formula for disaster.
They were just doing some more math. I don't know. I think maybe my only, because when you think about the fact they have quote unquote 3 months off in the middle and all of
Mhm.
that, I still feel like, and maybe this person just doesn't work as hard as they should. Maybe that's the issue. Because
Yeah.
I feel like the other teachers that I've known in my life, like friends and family members and stuff, they're doing things constantly outside of work hours and during the summer to prepare for school or to do things for school, like grading tests and creating lesson plans and getting supplies and all this stuff. So am I suggesting that it evens out completely compared to somebody that's working, in a regular office job, working 8 to 5 every day? No, I'm not suggesting that it completely evens out, but I don't think saying teachers are paid enough, they get 3 months off in the summer it's not as black and white as that.
I think the examples that you just gave, to me, that's like good teachers.
That's what I
right?
mean. Yeah.
So maybe a way to say it is good teachers, or especially great teachers, don't get paid enough.
Yeah.
Bad teachers
Get paid
too much.
Sure. I feel like you could and I think that argument can be made for a lot of industries that have a similar setup to that, because I'm thinking about when I worked at Disney, especially in the sections that had, and not that this is necessarily, I'm not trying to make this a union thing or whatever, but the ones that had unions, I would complain to you about, I wouldn't say her name anyway. I can't remember what her name was, but she and I were getting paid the same when I was supervising, and she did nothing.
Yep.
She came in, she sat in the office all day. She
Yep.
didn't do anything. She took like a longer break than she should have. She was constantly leaving the floor. And I'm over here running around doing everybody else's job, and I'm getting paid the same. For why? For what?
That happened to me in my first full-time job. I was a material handler, and it was the same thing.
I've heard
and the
about
problem is,
this
I know I'm not
many
going over the whole thing,
times.
but my point is it creates a disincentive for
disincentive.
you. And it doesn't do it.
And it did. How many times did I complain about that?
But it doesn't do it immediately, right? Like, but over time, it starts to create a disincentive. It's horrible. It sucks the productivity out of people,
And
as in
that's
a
why
negative way. It sucks the desire.
I
You
think
don't care if you do a good job anymore.
that's why you lose teachers that are better teachers because you want to talk about, in the one person's case, they were saying there was never a time when they were teaching that they didn't need a second job. Even if they love teaching, sometimes it's not enough to love what you're doing if you're not making enough money to live. And so the good teachers maybe, or not all of them obviously, but some of the better teachers maybe don't even make it to the point where it would be even with the bad teachers and all that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. It's very sad.
It is because, and even, now in that case, right, you're talking about getting a second job and all that. Well, let's say even if somebody makes enough to get by, it's still just so frustrating. And they stay there because they just love teaching and they don't want to do anything else. But it's still just so frustrating to think that the bad teachers are also getting, and maybe for the bad teachers, maybe they're fine with this because they know they're not doing anything.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think it's
horrible for the students.
I had mentioned this to you when we initially got these comments, but I feel like for me, when I think about teachers, I know this is much more idealistic maybe than it should be, but you think about, these are the people that quite literally shape the future of the country in a lot of cases. And so in that sense, I do feel like, especially again, people that just I know personally, maybe not teachers in general, but people that I know personally are or were, when they were teaching, underpaid based on how, good of people and good of teachers I knew that these people are and were.
Yep.
And I don't know, I know you can't, that's not a realistic reason to pay someone more because you know that they're like good and all that stuff, and that they're shaping the future of America is very idealistic and all that. But I don't know, I just feel like there's not enough consideration given to that.
It's true. And it works both ways, right? So it can be good.
Yeah.
Like a good teacher can have a very positive impact. Bad teachers can have a very negative impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think, since this episode isn't just is about more than just that, we should probably move on.
You're right. We should move on to...
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
Our grievances.
Which we kind of...
And we'll... we did talk about that, but we'll go right to, because this is kind of what we're talking about. You, I know, want to complain about fast food restaurants.
I'm going to do that in a second. I'm going to do one other one first so I don't forget it. Because I was thinking of it when you were talking about... All
right, you're going to forget if you say... No, so go ahead. What is it?
You're talking about in the...
What is it?
In this day in history, I'm getting to it. In this day in history, you're talking about the guy that was set the bomber.
Who cares?
Right?
What is it?
People... There's no excuse that people do not have, especially in areas with a lot of crime, that people do not have cameras like around their house, at least a few. Okay. It blows my mind around here that there are constantly cars being broken into, things like that. And there are so many people that don't have any cameras, or all they have is, like, say, the doorbell camera. And a lot of times the only time they record is if the motion is very close or a very limited amount of time. Like, they're cheap. They're not hard to set up.
What's cheap?
$20.
I think that's bold of you to assume that people have an extra $20.
$20?
There are people living paycheck to paycheck. You understand this, right?
I can't.
You know what paycheck to paycheck means? It means you don't have an extra $20 to spend on something.
It means you don't handle your money well.
It does, but I'm just saying.
How many of those people are sitting in their house right now ordering DoorDash?
Look, I'm not. All I'm saying is, you make it sound like it's the easiest thing in the world for people. And do I agree? Do I think, it would be super easy? They're not that expensive.
The vast majority of people can afford $20 or $30.
You cannot make assumptions like that.
It's not an assumption. It's not an assumption.
Yes, it is.
It's based on how much people. There are very few people in this country living in abject poverty.
No.
Okay? Percentage-wise,
anyway,
there are
so
not
let's
a lot
move
of
on
people.
to the
and we're not
fast food
talking about
restaurant.
just for the record. This is not like a poor neighborhood, right? It's not rich, but it's not poor. People can afford $20 or $30 or $100, and most of the time they spend more money on the cameras that they get, and they're not that great for what they're. So
Well, you should
anyway,
post in the Facebook group and make people feel
I'm
bad
saying in
about it.
general. I'm saying in general, because what bothers me is people getting away with this. The criminals getting away with this over and over and over and over again. So like, don't. So anyone listening to this, right? You could take action to do this, right? Spend a couple bucks on a camera or whatever. Make sure it's set up right.
Oh, now it's
Okay.
just a couple bucks.
Because
I see.
everything's relative. No, because almost everyone at some point or another, multiple times probably, will be a victim of these types of crimes. And like, the only way we're going to catch these people and keep them from doing it to you again or to someone else is by, I don't know, taking a little bit of time to do this. So anyway. You know, the funny thing is you have Teslas there with cameras all around them. I'm sure there are other cars that have similar things. So the good thing is it's much harder to get away with crime now. And because of DNA and all of that, it's a lot harder than it used to be. But it amazes me that they still do get away with it. Go ahead. Now you can move back to, you can continue your podcast.
Your next one.
You called it your podcast, remember?
When?
The last episode? Maybe it was the last episode.
It probably was the last
I don't
episode.
think it was.
Go ahead. Fast food restaurants. That's what
No,
I
you
said.
do one. You do one. And then we'll do...
I'm too annoyed to do one. Go ahead. Fast food restaurants. In quotes, fast food.
Okay. Here's my complaint. And you can't relate to this as much as people that are older. Fast food restaurants.
And I can't because people that are older complain about literally everything.
No.
So.
Fast food restaurants.
And I don't.
Are a joke anymore because they're not fast. Okay. And this is not, what do they call it when you remember things as better than they really were?
Looking at the past with rose-colored glasses.
This is not that. This is not that. And I'm not saying every restaurant is like this, but when you went to, for instance, a McDonald's, okay, because McDonald's is obviously the, number one fast food restaurant and all that. You pulled in and you had your food quickly. Even if they were busy, you had it relatively quickly, right? Now, even if they're not busy, you're waiting there 10, 15, 20 minutes. More often than not, they're asking you to pull ahead into another spot or whatever. They have the app that you can order ahead, which you would think, well, that'll save time. It doesn't save you any time. It makes it easier for the restaurant, but they don't help you at all. It's not like fast food restaurants used to pay way better wages. It's like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's just the people that work there, but somewhere along the line, whether it's the owner, the manager, the workers, the company overall, they stopped caring. They just don't care anymore. They don't. Do you disagree with that?
I don't necessarily disagree, but I also think there are going to be people that don't care about their jobs like that. And to expect someone who I wasn't there yesterday, so maybe I'd feel differently, although there are plenty of...
Go ahead. When you're saying you weren't there yesterday, I didn't explain why. I'm just saying it was based on what happened yesterday.
Well, yeah, it took a while to get your food, and then the guy didn't apologize that there was a wait, and he was in no rush. Does that summarize what happened?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, so it does. And I have experienced that situation multiple times in my life. This is not like a novel experience you have
during
had,
your life,
right?
It has not been the novel thing.
No, okay.
It was unheard of.
Because your generation was perfect and you guys did everything right and you guys worked hard and you had values and kids nowadays don't care about anything and we're lazy.
Maybe the issue was...
No, the issue is the older generation is super judgmental.
Tell me
Go
what
ahead.
it is. Okay. Well, I guess that's what it is.
It is.
Okay, so we're judgmental, not you right now. Not you right now.
You started it. I'm responding to what you were talking about. I'm defending.
Except my observation is based on my life experience. Okay.
Sure. Back in the
Like,
good old
I
days when
was
everybody was
there.
perfect and everybody
No, I
worked
didn't
really
say
hard.
that. I didn't say maybe the difference was there was a higher unemployment rate. So you couldn't just go get a job anywhere. That wasn't a thing. You
Maybe.
couldn't just say, well, I can always fall back on on McDonald's. If you got a job at McDonald's, okay, you're in high school, you're happy that you got a job. You're happy that you have the opportunity to make money. If you don't work hard, if you're lazy, you don't have a job. Okay. So I'm saying if the unemployment rate, instead of being 4%, is all of a sudden 8 or 9%, it makes a big difference. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, and
There's
that's
more
fine.
competition.
And that's fine. I'm not disagreeing with that specifically, but I'm just saying I just feel like you're making it seem like I don't want to keep this and make this a whole thing. It's just what?
Why? I guess the thing that I don't get is, why do you seem to take it personally? Because I'm not saying your generation. I'm talking about specifically the people that. And now, just for the record, a couple months ago, I went to a different McDonald's and it wasn't like that. They were very busy. Okay. So I don't know. Was it run as efficiently as it could have been? I have no idea. But I never had the impression that the people didn't care and they were just taking their good old time and stuff like that. And I just know, I just can't imagine being like that, okay, and not caring. It's like you're getting paid to do something. Like,
Yeah, and that's what I was, again, not that I feel this way specifically, but this is what I was trying to explain to you yesterday, how Gen Z has their whole quote unquote act your wage thing, where it's like you're not getting that guy specifically. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm just saying a lot of people do agree with this, and saying, I mean, I don't know what the minimum pay for a McDonald's employee is these days, but I don't know. Let's assume it's maybe, well, actually, the I'm not gonna look it up, but the minimum wage in Florida is lower, so I don't know. Let's assume it's like $13,
mm-hmm. I mean,
which I think is reasonable.
That sounds fair.
It might not
saying,
actually be that high,
but
just
whatever.
for your frontline worker. It's $13. For argument's sake, homeboy does not get paid more if he jogs lightly out to your car and apologizes for the wait and then, rushes back to help the next customer. He gets paid the $13 an hour no matter what. And if he has no desire whatsoever to continue working for McDonald's in the future, or even to like move up in the restaurant industry, what is his incentive besides wanting to be a good worker in general? What is his incentive to run to the car and to?
I'm not even saying run, just for the record.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Let's say that you own that restaurant. You're a franchisee. You own that restaurant. You're hiring people. As the owner, how do you react to that? Do you figure, well, because you could do the same thing. You could say, well, these people are paying for fast food,
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there.
We're not making that much money per person. What do I care?
And I'm going to answer your question. And your question is, these restaurants, and I know this for a fact, have such a high turnover rate because these people are dispensable. For all you know, that guy is getting fired this week or, soon because he's not doing the job that they want him to be doing. The turnover rate at these restaurants is extremely high. They do not train them.
I'm sure it is
properly. They do not, and I'm not talking about specifically McDonald's. I'm talking about restaurants in general like this.
Mm-hmm.
They do not care about employees. They do not care about the training them properly. They don't.
I'm not disagreeing with what you said about the high turnover. You were making it like I was going to argue with that point. And I wasn't going to argue.
Because you do. You argue with a lot of stuff that you shouldn't argue with. Let's talk about how. Because here's my complaint, my first and last complaint of the day. Because we're out of time. Let's look at. This is from a TikTok video recently, this week or last week. Let's look at Philly. This guy was looking at a Boy Meets World episode where Corey and Topanga, which Boy Meets World is arguably the best show ever. And that's debatable, but we could talk about it one time. Let's look at Philly. This guy says the median price for a home in 1999 in Philadelphia was $80,000. $80,000. The income then, the median income in Philadelphia was $40,000. We can all do the math there. We're all pretty smart. Now, the median income in 2025 for a home in Philadelphia is $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the median income in Philadelphia is $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the housing price in Philly went up over 200% in the last 25 years, and the average income only went up 53%.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, we could talk about your generation and how much what?
Well, no. I was going to say it's not just about the generation. It's the question is why? How did we get here?
You killed
That's
the
all.
economy.
I didn't kill the economy.
Yes, you did. Your
I didn't-
generation did.
I
Goodbye,
didn't-
everyone. Have a great week.
Don't even. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Do a mic check.
Mic check.
I'm gonna mute. Check.
Hold on, let me mute.
Check. Checking the microphone. Checking the microphone. Okay, that's not. I can't. Okay.
Wait, did you record that?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. It's recording. See it's
Okay. How many seconds are we at?
when it's black. It's we're 4.3 megs, 55 seconds. We're almost a minute in.
Wow.
Yeah.
You did
Yeah.
it.
The episode's practically over and we didn't get started yet.
Thanks for joining us this week.